Fantastic. We're not done with the conversation yet. So straight up, we're not taking a break. We're going straight. So, we did promise you we're going to look briefly at the legalese around this whole airports, passenger, airline matter. Kevin Udim is a legal practitioner. He does these explainers online. You can check out for yourself sometimes. Kevin, please, thank you so much for coming on the program. And can you kindly unmute your device so we can hear you?
I've done that. Thank you for having me.
Okay, let's just give you like 2-3 minutes. So help us make sense of, if you can do a quick juxtaposition of both scenario and what the law says in terms of behavior, consequence for action, who dropped the ball where, and what this leaves all of us.
Well, if you look at the National Civil Aviation Act, Laws of the Federation of Nigeria, 2004, it has made copious provisions concerning the behavior of passengers on board an airline. So if you look at Section 85, Sub 2 of that Act, National Civil Aviation Act, Sub 2 says that anyone while on board an aircraft, if the person interferes with the crew members or becomes unruly while on board, the person commits an offense. And if found guilty, the person is liable to pay a fine of 200,000 naira or be sent to prison for 2 months or be made to pay the fine and also go to prison. Now, if you look at Sub 3 of the same Section 85, it specifically prohibits the use of mobile phones while on board an aircraft, where the mobile phone is capable of interfering with the signals of the aircraft. It becomes an offense. And that section also provides that if you are found liable by a court of law of competent jurisdiction, you shall pay a fine of 200,000 naira and go to prison for 2 months, or you'll be liable to pay the fine and also go to prison. Now, if you look at Section 85, Sub 4 of the same Act, I'm talking about the National Civil Aviation Act, it says that the pilots in command shall take necessary measures as may be necessary to ensure the safety of the aircraft and passengers on board whenever he is faced with an unruly passenger, and may request the assistance of any person on board, to assist him in bringing that person to order. So the laws of the Federation of Nigeria is already there. In fact, it has even mentioned the use of mobile phone while on board the plane. So it is not something that is new to the Nigerian legal system. And I think that everybody is expected to obey the law. When you go on board the plane, you should be able to behave in accordance with acceptable standard of behavior so that you don't fall on the wrong side of the law, because when you get convicted, it's a serious issue for anybody.
Another thing I'd like you to provide clarity on, which Mr. Chimugu spoke to earlier, is what rights does the AON have to impose a life ban on flying on an erring passenger? Because some have said that in line with aviation laws, the AON is not a statutory regulator and has no legal mandate to unilaterally abridge the constitutionally guaranteed rights to freedom of movement under Section 41 of the 1999 Constitution. But Mr. Chimugu says that if the action of a passenger negatively impacts on the property of an airline, that the airline reserves the right to act. So I'd like you to provide clarity on this particular concern.
Well, it's a dicey kind of situation. Lots of persons have said you do not have the rights to stop a citizen of the country from freedom of movement and then the freedom to choose the means of movement. But at the same time, when you look at Section 4, Chapter 4 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, which makes copious provision for fundamental rights. I think there are about 12 fundamental rights that have been specified in that chapter of the Constitution. There is no provision that says that there is the right to fly by air, by whatever means, It gives the general rights for freedom of movement. And therefore, if the airline operators are saying, we are not going to allow you to fly, I find it difficult to see how a citizen of the country whose conduct has been found to be unruly can get justice in the courts to the extent that the courts would compel the owners of the airlines, to carry her. Now, don't forget that the relationship between the passenger and the owner of the aircraft is contractual. And so when there must be an offer in the price, and then the acceptance you pay, and then a contract is created. If you pay and the airline operator says, I am not receiving your money because I consider your behavior to be unruly, it therefore means that no contract has been created at that point. If no contract has been created, then no contract can be said to have been breached. But let me say this. The airline operators, it is an appeal to them. I think that banning her forever is excessive. And I think that should be reviewed. I think that the Aviation Authority in Nigeria should also look into that. At the end of this whole thing, I think that the issue of banning her forever, indefinitely, is something that needs to be reviewed. But I don't think it is strictly something that has to do with fundamental right, because by and large, when you go, if you want to travel by air or by any means of transportation, it is a contractual relationship. If no contract is created, no contract can be breached.
So also I talked about juxtaposition about the Kwam Wong case. He's on maybe even weightier, has the borderline about hijacking. The NCAA man had come here to say they don't have prosecutory powers, so they petitioned the IGP and the AGF to sue the Fuji musician who has apologized, but the people say he has to face his day in court. Other explainers has to be done to the judge and all that. What do you make of that particular situation? Because from the laws I saw, it looks like if he's found guilty of hijacking, he may spend the rest of his life in jail.
Well, if the airline authority is saying that they do not have prosecutorial powers,
the NCAA, not the airline, the NCAA, the petition, the AGF and the IGP, because they can't prosecute. Not the airline. Airline can't prosecute.
That's fine. The power of prosecution in the entire country resides in the Attorney General exclusively. It is the Attorney General that decides to delegate the power to anybody to prosecute on his behalf. So there is nothing wrong in petitioning the office of the Attorney General to look into the matter, take up the file, prosecute the person if a prima facie case is found in the course of investigation against the person. But we must not also have double standards in the country. Somebody behaved in a way that was unacceptable yesterday on board Ibom A, and the person was immediately charged to court. Was the person charged by the office of the Attorney General? Why did the same office not also charge Kwam Wong, who also behaved in a way that was unacceptable? I think we must have equal treatment of similar matters in the country, irrespective of who is involved. Both situations were unacceptable, and they do not provide good optics for Nigeria. You do not go stopping an airline from flying. Now, Kwam Wong was very lucky that the wing of the aircraft, did not hit his head, because we saw how he was able to dodge, and that for me was something that even frightened me watching from a distance. If Kwam Wong had died, the pilot also would have been in trouble, because the pilot would have rightly been charged to court for murder or manslaughter. None of this is good for anybody, let alone a pilot. Manslaughter, if your lawyers are able to argue it out for you and say it was unintentional killing, once there is killing, the penalty is that you go to jail and remain there forever. And that's not good for any pilot. So what am I saying in essence? There is need for restraint by every professional. A professional pilot must not be someone that can easily trigger her, anger level, or his anger level must be someone that will be circumspect in taking decisions. And also, passengers using airlines must also not provoke these things from occurring. Who is the person that even cleared Kwam Wong? I have asked that question, because when you travel, when the aircraft, the boarding has stopped, nobody allows you to pass. How come that Kwam Wong was able to move from the boarding area, get to where the flight was already waiting to fly? That itself was unacceptable. So I think that this whole thing should be treated equally. It should be treated decisively. And thank God the Minister of Aviation is a lawyer, senior one at that. And I don't know, yesterday I was just asking myself, could it be that the president had known that something like this was going to happen, or had foreseen? Was he a prophet to have seen that a time like this was coming, and therefore he sends Festus Keyamo, to the aviation industry? Nigerians look up to him as a senior advocate and as someone who knows his onions to be able to handle these situations, both situations equally, and ensure that justice, is attained in this whole thing, so as to stop citizens from behaving anyhow. The airport is such a sensitive place that we cannot just allow anybody, irrespective of who the person is, from behaving anyhow in a way that can endanger other people's lives.
So now that we understand that it's the Attorney General that has that reserves the right to prosecute, and we await that, and we are not seeing the airline itself prosecuting Kwam Won in the first instance, how should we be interpreting the refusal to act on both parts, on the part of the airline, ValueJet now, and on the part of the Attorney General? That's in a matter of days if we do not see any action from both parties.
Well, legally speaking, ValueJet cannot really do anything. The highest they can do is to ban Kwam Won, from entering their flights anymore and stop receiving money from
But we see,
Kwam
Mr.
Won.
Ekemini, but we see Ibom Air pressing charges in the case of Comfort and Manson.
Yes, no, so like I said, ValueJet can hardly do anything, right? Because they do not have the power of prosecution. But it is the Attorney General of the Federation that has the power of prosecution as found in the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and every other agency has the power donated to them by the Attorney General. So it was very good yesterday that instead of keeping a citizen of Nigeria in unlawful custody, the citizen was immediately taken to the court. And I commend the airport authority for that, or whoever did the prosecution, because the Constitution of Nigeria has insisted over time that whenever anybody has committed an offense, charge the person to court within 24 hours if you have courts of competent jurisdiction within the radius of 40 kilometers. And there are many courts in Lagos, and rightly she was taken there. We would have expected that the same treatment would be meted out to Kwam Won. Kwam Won has apologized, which is beautiful. That's honorable of him. But at the same time, the law courts is not a religious place of worship where you just apologize and it is gone. In the law courts, apology is good. You have accepted that you have done something that is unacceptable. Okay, so in the meting of punishment by the judge or by the magistrate, that apology is going to be taken into consideration, and therefore you may be given a lesser punishment. But to say that the apology alone, like I have read elsewhere, that apology means to A is human, and to forgive, to A is human, to forgive is divine. Well, that's fine. But where people have committed offenses against the laws of the Federation of Nigeria or against the laws of any state of the Federation, what is required is that appropriate punishment, appropriate measures be taken in line with the provisions of the law so as to treat that matter equally. So I want to believe that the Ministry of Aviation is not done with the Kwam Won matter. Nigerians will be disappointed if that is all that can be done by Nigeria against Kwam Won. I just want to believe and give them the benefit of doubt that very soon Nigerians are going to be briefed about the way forward on the issue of Kwam Won.
Well, thank you so much. Sorry we had to rush because of time. We're really literally racing. Ekemini Udem, always brilliant in your submission on the perspective of the law. Thank you, sir. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.